The message came through at 11:47 p.m. A blue bubble on a dark screen. She's still crying. No name, just a number I didn't have saved. I was sitting in my car, engine off, hands still on the wheel like they'd fossilized there. The smell of cake frosting and perfume clung to my jacket. Vanilla. Expensive. Too sweet. It made my stomach turn. I watched the reflection of my own face in the windshield, distorted, split by the glass. Ruining the aesthetic. That was the phrase. She'd said it lightly, almost bored, like brushing lint off a sleeve. People were laughing behind her, phones raised, candles lit. My wife, glowing at the center of the frame, tilted her head and smiled for someone else's camera. Not mine. I remember stepping sideways, then backward, then turning. No one noticed me leave. That was the first thing that hurt. The second was how calm I felt as I kept walking. I didn't reply to the message. I put the phone face down on the passenger seat and stared into the dark. Somewhere behind me, she was crying. That was the story anyway. But crying had become one of her performances, and I'd finally walked out of the shot. On the drive home, my mind replayed the moment with forensic precision. Her tone, her eyes, the way she didn't even look at me when she said it. This wasn't new. It was just clearer. For months, I'd felt like furniture, useful, quiet, something arranged to complete a room, not to be seen. She'd started guarding her phone like it contained state secrets, taking calls on the balcony, smiling at messages that had nothing to do with me. I told myself it was stress, work, turning 40, the slow erosion every marriage pretends isn't happening. But something had shifted. At night, she'd lie facing away from me, the glow of her screen lighting up the wall like a second moon. I'd listen to the soft taps of her thumbs. I'd count them. I never asked who she was talking to. I was afraid of the answer. That night, after the party, I didn't go home. I went to a hotel near the freeway. Cheap, anonymous, the kind of place where no one asks questions because no one wants answers. I lay on the bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. Her words replayed again. Your face. Ruining. Aesthetic. It wasn't just cruelty, it was ownership, the way you speak to something you believe you've already discarded. That's when the suspicion finally hardened into certainty. You don't humiliate someone like that, unless you've replaced them. I didn't confront her. I smiled when I saw her the next morning, kissed her cheek, asked if she'd had a good night. She looked surprised, then relieved. That told me everything. Over the next few weeks, I became meticulous, observant, silent. I checked the phone records. One number appeared too often. Late nights, long calls, always when she thought I was asleep. I followed patterns, gym days that lasted too long, business dinners that ended after midnight, new lingerie that never made it into our bedroom. I copied files from our shared laptop, calendar invites that didn't match her explanations, receipts from restaurants I'd never been to. Still, I said nothing. Inside, my thoughts were a storm, loud, violent, demanding action. Outside, I was calm. That was my advantage. I hired a private lab, discreet. No names, no questions. I'd had my reasons for years. Medical paperwork, blood work from a routine exam. It took 3 weeks for the results. 3 weeks of sleeping beside a stranger. 3 weeks of rehearsing conversations I would never have. I stopped touching her. She didn't notice. The envelope was thin. Too thin for the weight it carried. I sat at the kitchen table while she was out shopping. Sunlight poured in through the windows, illuminating dust motes in the air. Everything looked peaceful, domestic. False. The words were clinical, polite. Probability of paternity, 0%. I read it twice, then a third time. No rage, no tears. Just confirmation. That evening, I set the envelope on the counter between us while she poured herself a glass of wine. "What's that?" she asked. I didn't raise my voice. "Something you forgot to tell me." She opened it, read, froze. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Red wine spread like a stain. She looked at me then. Really looked. Her face collapsed inward, mouth opening, closing. I waited. "I can explain," she whispered. I nodded. "I know." That broke her. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I listed facts, dates, times, names. I told her I'd already spoken to a lawyer, that the house was in my name, that the accounts had been separated weeks ago, that her parents knew everything. I watched comprehension dawn, slow and devastating. This wasn't a fight. It was an autopsy. She cried, begged, blamed stress, loneliness, me. I let her finish, then I picked up my keys. "I stepped out of the picture," I said. "You wanted that." Her sobs followed me down the hall. They sounded distant, unconvincing, like bad acting in an empty room. I live somewhere else now, smaller, quieter, clean. Sometimes I think about that photo, how perfect it must have looked once I was gone. No disruption, no wrong angles. I hope she keeps it. I don't check her messages. I don't respond to her friends. Crying is loud. Truth is silent. And silence, finally, belongs to me.